a charismatic man named Mecistius. Mecistius was a character who deserves his own historical epic. He was the most popular man in the Persian army, a giant of a figure standing head and shoulders above normal men, riding a magnificent Nicean stallion with a bridle made of solid gold. He led a squadron of cavalry right up the slopes to harass the exposed Greek infantry lines. They rode in taunting circles, hooting war cries, jeering insults, and raining arrows down on the Greeks. They called the Spartans women for hiding in the hills. It was psychologically humiliating warfare. Part 7, 1,478 characters. The Greeks were taking steady casualties, completely unable to strike back effectively against these hit-and-run mounted archer tactics. The Megarians, a contingent of Greek allies, were pinned down and on the verge of routing in panic. They sent a desperate message to Pausanias: "Send reinforcements or we abandon our position." Pausanias looked around at his assembled commanders, who would volunteer to go down and fight elite cavalry on open ground. It was a suicide mission, but a group of 300 Athenians stepped forward, a deliberate echo of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. They rushed down to support the trapped Megarians, bringing their own archers for covering fire. In the chaotic skirmish that followed, battlefield luck intervened. A Greek arrow struck Mecistius's horse in the flank. The magnificent beast reared up in pain, throwing the Persian commander heavily to the ground. The moment he hit the dirt, the Athenians swarmed him like wolves. But here's a detail that shows just how advanced Persian military engineering had become. They couldn't kill him initially. Mecistius was wearing a sophisticated suit of scale armor under his purple tunic that was essentially impenetrable to sword strikes. The Greeks were frantically hacking at him with swords and spears, and their weapons were bouncing off harmlessly. He was fighting back despite being unhorsed, a gold-clad tank of a man still dangerous, until one clever Athenian soldier realized the obvious trick. He jammed the spike of his spear directly through the eye-hole of Mecistius's helmet. The giant Persian commander fell dead. The death of Mecistius sent a psychological shockwave through the entire Persian army. The cavalry charged recklessly forward to recover his body, leading to a brutal, dusty brawl over the corpse that lasted nearly an hour. But the Greeks held their ground through sheer determination. They hoisted the body of the famous Persian commander onto a cart and paraded it triumphantly through the Greek ranks. It was a massive morale boost that electrified the army. They had drawn first blood. They had killed the enemy's favorite son. But Pausanias knew with cold, tactical clarity this preliminary victory was just the prologue. Mardonius was watching from the valley floor, and he was no longer smiling. The staring contest was over. The real war was about to begin with full fury. The euphoria of killing the Persian cavalry commander didn't last long. In fact, it evaporated as quickly as water on hot Greek stone. It was now August in Greece. The Mediterranean sun was a physical weight, hammering down relentlessly on men encased in 60 pounds of bronze armor. Sweating was constant and debilitating. Dehydration killed faster than any Persian arrow. Pausanias looked at his massive army and realized they had developed a critical problem. They were positioned on defensible high ground, safe from cavalry charges, but they were dangerously far from any reliable water source. Emboldened by their small victory against Mecistius and his cavalry, Pausanias ordered a risky maneuver. The entire Greek line, all 110,000 men, shuffled down from the safety of the foothills toward the Asopus River, settling near a vital water source called the Gargaphia Spring. It seemed like a tactically sound idea at the time. It absolutely wasn't. Mardonius watched them move from his camp. He didn't attack immediately. He didn't send his infantry charging across the river to meet them in glorious collision. Why would he waste men? He saw exactly what Pausanias had done, with crystal clarity. The Greeks had just extended their vulnerable neck. They were now closer to the enemy positions, but more critically important, their supply lines, stretching back through the mountain passes, were now dangerously exposed to cavalry raids. Mardonius snapped his fingers and unleashed his cavalry again with new orders, but this time, their mission wasn't to kill soldiers in direct combat. It was to systematically strangle the Greek army through supply interdiction. In a brilliant masterstroke of logistical warfare, Persian horsemen circled wide around the Greek army's flanks and struck the mountain passes behind them with devastating effectiveness. They intercepted a massive convoy of 500 supply wagons, bringing food from the Peloponnese. They didn't just capture the wagons for their own use. They systematically slaughtered the oxen pulling them and killed all the civilian drivers, leaving the Greek army completely cut off from fresh bread and supplies. Suddenly, the Battle of Platea wasn't primarily about fighting. It was about starving and waiting. For 8 long, miserable days, the two armies sat there in brutal standoff. The Greeks were terrified to move forward because the open ground was a death sentence against superior cavalry. They couldn't move backward without looking like cowards and destroying fragile coalition morale. So they sat in place, baking in the relentless August heat, while Mardonius methodically tightened the noose around them. Every single day, Persian cavalry would ride up to the Asopus River, launch volleys of arrows into the frustrated Greek ranks, and then wheel away laughing. They were taunting the Spartans with mocking insults. "Come out and fight like men!" But Pausanias held the defensive line with famous Spartan iron discipline. He absolutely forbade his men from breaking formation or charging rashly. But military discipline doesn't quench burning thirst or fill empty stomachs. Then came the breaking point on the 11th day. Mardonius decided he was bored with passive waiting. He ordered his cavalry to bypass the Greek front line entirely and strike their most vulnerable strategic asset, the Gargaphia Spring itself. This wasn't a military battle. It was environmental vandalism. The Persian horses deliberately trampled the spring, churning the clear water into a thick, undrinkable slurry of mud and silt contaminated with horse waste. In a matter of hours, the only reliable water source for an army of 110,000 men was completely destroyed. Picture the desperate situation clearly. It's nightfall. You haven't eaten a full meal in days. Your lips are cracked and bleeding from thirst. The spring is ruined. Enemy cavalry controls all the roads behind you. You're effectively trapped. Panic began to ripple through the fragile coalition like wildfire spreading. The captains of various Greek city-states started arguing bitterly. The Athenians wanted to attack immediately. The Corinthians wanted to retreat while possible. The Spartans were characteristically stonewalling. Pausanias, the man holding this fragile alliance together through sheer force of personality, realized he had absolutely no choice. If they stayed one more day without water, the army would dissolve from thirst, heat exhaustion, or mutiny. He made a decision that military historians consider one of the most dangerous maneuvers in warfare: a tactical retreat at night, in close proximity to the enemy. The plan was complex, but logical. At the second watch of the night, the entire massive army would silently pack up and pull back to a defensive position called the island, closer to the mountain and fresh water sources. It required absolute silence. It required perfect coordination across multiple contingents. It required every single unit to move at the exact same time without alerting the Persians camped just a few hundred yards away across the river. It was a solid plan on paper, but as anyone who has studied military history knows, with painful certainty, elaborate plans are the first casualty of actual battlefield reality. As the sun went down and the moon rose over the dark silhouette of Mount Kithaeron, the Greeks prepared to execute their withdrawal. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to step into a comedy of errors that would nearly cost them Western civilization itself. The plan was simple in concept: withdraw to high ground, regroup around fresh water, and resume defensive positions. But as soon as the signal was given, the fragile coalition fell apart. The center of the Greek line, composed of soldiers from Corinth, Megara, and other allied city-states, didn't just withdraw in good order. They panicked. They grabbed their shields and essentially sprinted away from the front in near rout. They didn't stop at the agreed-upon position. They kept running all the way back to the town of Platea itself, huddling around the temple of Hera for protection, effectively taking themselves completely out of the fight. Part 1. 1,467 characters. In the darkness and confusion, the Greek army had just lost 50% of its manpower because of fear and poor coordination. But on the right wing, where the Spartans were stationed, the problem wasn't fear. It was pride and stubbornness. This brings us to one of the most obstinate men in military history, Captain Amampharatus. He commanded the Lochos of Pitana, a prestigious Spartan unit. When the withdrawal order came down from Pausanias, Amampharatus flat out refused. He stood there, surrounded by his men, and told the regent of Sparta that he absolutely would not bring shame upon his country by running away from the strangers, his deliberately derogatory term for the Persians. Imagine the surreal scene. It's 2 a.m. It's pitch black. The rest of the army is trying to sneak away in silence. And here is Pausanias, the supreme commander of all Greek forces, having a screaming match with one of his own subordinate captains. Pausanias begged him desperately. He explained it wasn't a retreat, but a tactical repositioning to better ground. Amampharatus didn't care about semantic distinctions. To a Spartan warrior bred on the legend of Thermopylae, where the 300 died rather than retreat, walking backward was absolute heresy. The argument escalated and got physical. Amampharatus picked up a massive boulder with both hands, a heavy stone from the riverbed. He slammed it down at Pausanias's feet with a thud that probably echoed through the valley. He pointed at the rock and shouted, "With this pebble, I cast my vote not to flee from the strangers." In Spartan democracy, citizens voted on issues by dropping pebbles into urns. Amampharatus was mockingly using a boulder to cast his vote for death over retreat. While this ridiculous Spartan family drama was happening, the Athenians on the left wing were sitting there utterly confused. They knew the Spartans were supposed to move first as agreed, but nothing was happening. They sent a runner over to the Spartan camp to investigate. The Athenian messenger found the Spartan commanders literally screaming at each other while the entire army stood motionless. Part 12. Conclusion. 1,156 characters. Pausanias finally decided to leave Amampharatus behind, hoping pride would make him follow. The main Spartan column began marching, constantly looking back. When Amampharatus realized he was truly abandoned to face 300,000 Persians alone, he cracked and jogged to catch up, but it was too late. The sky was lightening. Persian sentries saw the Greek center gone, Athenians distant, Spartans exposed and strung out. Mardonius saw a rout and ordered immediate attack. Persian cavalry and infantry surged forward. Pausanias, caught mid-march, halted his disorganized column. He was alone, 10,000 Spartiates and 35,000 Helots against the entire Persian Empire. He ordered his army to halt and drop to one knee. Then, he turned his back on the enemy and called for a priest. He needed favorable omens before fighting. For over an hour, Spartans crouched behind shields while arrows fell. Pausanias sacrificed 3 goats. The signs were bad. Wait. Helots without bronze armor died in droves. Spartan Callicratus died frustrated. I don't mind dying for Greece. What I mind is dying without having struck a blow. Finally, the 3rd goat showed favorable omens. Pausanias raised his spear. The Spartans exploded forward, shattered Persian wicker shields, crushed infantry in Othismos shoving. Aramnestos killed Mardonius. Artabazus abandoned 40,000 troops and fled. 3,000 Persians survived. Subscribe to Great History for more battles where chaotic withdrawals accidentally created perfect victory conditions.